The drizzle came down in thin needles, bouncing off the cracked pavement of Key Highway. Neon signs from the Harbor Light Diner flickered against wet asphalt, pulling tired drivers off the road after a long night at Camden Yards. Inside, Imani Wells wiped down the last booth, her mind racing faster than her hands. The manager had cut her shift short again. Slow night, no tips coming in. Words that sliced deeper than they sounded. Rent was due in 4 days. Heat bill overdue. Her walk-up apartment on Light Street felt more like a countdown clock than a home. Imani wasn't new to struggle. Waiting tables wasn't the plan she once had. Years back, she had trained as an EMT, fueled by adrenaline and the idea of saving lives. But life derailed after her brother vanished in high school. College loans, bills, grief, everything pulled her into survival mode. And now, survival meant pouring coffee at midnight for strangers rushing past. As she stepped outside for air, she spotted Ranger, the stray shepherd that had made the diner's back alley his kingdom. Mangy, ribs showing, but sharp. He didn't wag when he saw her. He froze, ears stiff, muscles tense. A low growl rippled from his chest, aimed not at her but across the slick street. Imani followed his stare. There, beneath the muted glow of a street lamp, Officer Grant Adler leaned against his patrol car, clipboard in hand. He was running plates on a gray Dodge Charger with temporary tags, a routine traffic stop on a quiet night. Nothing about it screamed danger until Imani noticed movement in the shadows behind the concrete median, a hooded figure. The kind that doesn't just pass by, the kind that waits. Imani felt her stomach tighten, the way it had years ago during her first EMT ride-along when a crash victim's silence told her more than the blood did. Her instinct whispered, "Something is off." She took one step forward, then froze. Warm breath brushed her ear. A whisper, hoarse and urgent, "Stay quiet." Her skin prickled. She whipped her head to the side, but no one was there. Just darkness, drizzle, and the smell of wet asphalt. Ranger barked, once sharp, and the hooded figure twitched. Across the road, Officer Grant Adler still hadn't noticed. He leaned in toward the driver's window, body exposed. The hooded figure's hand dipped low. A blade flashed silver, catching the streetlight. Imani's pulse roared. She couldn't shout, not without giving herself away. She couldn't freeze, not with the knife lifting inches from Adler's ribs. She gripped her thermos tight, then let it roll from her fingers. It clattered across the pavement, spinning toward Adler's feet. He straightened, glancing back at her, confused but alert. The hooded figure moved. Imani lunged.
Imani's shoes slid on the wet lane as she sprinted. She didn't shout his name, she didn't warn the man in the hood. The only sound was Ranger's hard bark behind her and the hiss of tires rolling past the diner. Adler saw the thermos near his boot, then caught sight of Imani barreling toward him. His hand twitched toward his radio. The hooded figure adjusted his stance, blade low, shoulder angled like he'd practiced it. Imani cut left to stay out of the patrol car's light bar. She learned one thing from those EMT drills: keep your head, use what you have. She had wet ground, a rolling thermos, and a heartbeat that refused to slow down. She threw her weight into a hip check that nudged Adler back from the driver's window. He stumbled half a step, surprised but responsive, eyes snapping to the shadow behind the median. The blade rose. Imani didn't look at it. She went for Adler's shoulder, fingers digging into the fabric, yanking him offline. The knife swiped through the space his ribs had filled a second earlier, cutting air and rain. The driver in the Charger stared straight ahead, both hands on the wheel. No panic, no flinch. That told Imani plenty. Ranger hit the curb, paws scraping for traction, barking so hard it sounded like a cough. The bark did its job. The hooded man's focus broke, just a fraction. It was enough. Adler planted his feet, hand hovering near his holster, not on it. Training was a thin line on nights like this. Wrong move, wrong shot, wrong story tomorrow. Imani kept her body between the blade and the cop. She didn't plan it. Her body made the choice before her mind did. The hooded man's head tilted. He seemed to study her the way a street player studies a mark. Then he shifted again, moving with the kind of calm that says this isn't his first roadside moment. The thermos, still spinning from the earlier roll, tapped the man's ankle. Tiny sound, big result. He glanced down. Only a blink, but a blink is space, and space turns into safety when you take it. Adler saw it too. He stepped sideways, giving himself a triangle of room. One more second, and he would either call it in or take the shot. "Don't," Imani breathed, barely a sound. She didn't know why she said it, only that the wrong choice would lock this night into misery for everyone. The hooded man flicked his wrist. The blade flashed again, closer to Imani now. She felt the air move near her jacket. She dropped her weight and reached for Adler's shoulder a second time, harder this round, dragging him even farther from the strike path. A car horn blared from the far lane. A delivery van eased by, the driver gawking, phone in hand, filming the kind of scene that blows up by morning. Ranger lunged and barked, paws splashing in a shallow pool. The sound hit like a hammer. The hooded man's reset his grip, blade angled down, elbow tucked. He was waiting for the cop to make the first mistake. Imani had a different plan. She kept her voice low, shaking but steady. "Officer, step back. Left, now." He obeyed the left, not the back. The hooded man committed. He drove forward. Time gave them one beat. No more, no less. Imani yanked Adler's shoulder with everything she had. The blade flashed.
The knife carved air where Adler's side had been. Rain sprayed off its edge, droplets scattering like sparks under the streetlight. Imani's shoulder ached from yanking him twice, but she didn't let go. She pressed forward, keeping herself between him and the hooded man. Her breath came in short bursts, but her eyes never left the blade. "Ma'am, move back," Adler barked, voice low but clipped. He tried to edge around her, the way cops are trained to do. Take command, block the threat, protect the civilian. But Imani wasn't moving. She shot back under her breath. "If you go straight at him, you're done." Ranger's growl cut through the drizzle again, sharper now, like he could smell the next move before anyone else. His paws pawed at the curb, wanting in. The hooded man smirked, almost casual like he'd been here before. His hand twitched, blade catching another slice of yellow light. He wasn't running. He wasn't scared. He was waiting for a mistake. A passing sedan honked, jerking everyone's nerves. The driver leaned out his window, shouting something about "get off the road," but the words barely registered. The noise only ratcheted the tension higher. Imani's stomach turned. One wrong move, one wrong flinch, and this wouldn't end with cuffs. It would end with blood on the road, headlines by morning, and maybe no one believing the truth of how it really went down. She thought fast. If she screamed, the man would strike. If Adler drew, the man might charge. The balance was fragile, thinner than the sheen of water covering the pavement. Imani forced her voice into a whisper, aimed at Adler. "Step sideways. Don't rush him. Trust me." Adler gave her a look. Confusion, maybe frustration, but he shifted one step to the side, weight spread, hands still hovering near his holster. His trust was thin, but it was there. The hooded figure pivoted, eyes darting between them. Then he lunged. Imani dropped low, instincts firing faster than thought. She swept her arm up into Adler's torso, knocking him off center again. The blade swiped inches from her cheek, close enough that the cold air from its path burned against her skin.
Ranger exploded forward, barking so loud it echoed across the wet bricks. The hooded man faltered, just half a second, but that was enough for Adler to square his stance. For the first time tonight, Adler's hand gripped his weapon. His finger hovered near the trigger. Imani froze. The whole world seemed to hinge on what would happen in the next breath. Would the officer fire? Would the hooded man swing? Or would she, a waitress cut from hours and drowning in bills, become the only line standing between order and chaos? The drizzle turned to steady rain, drumming harder on the patrol car roof. The hooded man raised the knife high. Imani braced.
She never saw the danger coming, and most people don't. Subscribe to Goodness Corner now so you're not caught off guard when the next twist drops. And if you wouldn't have stepped in like Imani did, tell me in the comments. Would you risk it or stay back? The storm didn't ease, it only grew louder, swallowing the street in a blanket of noise. The gray Dodge Charger idled at the curb, its headlights glaring through the rain. Inside, the driver stayed frozen, staring forward as if none of this concerned him. Officer Grant Adler's chest heaved, one hand near his radio, the other hovering just above his holster. His training told him to take control, but his body knew he had nearly been cut down seconds earlier. That awareness shook him deeper than he would admit. Imani Wells crouched low, her wet hair sticking to her face, eyes locked on the hooded man who hadn't run. Instead, the attacker advanced again, blade tilted, body loose like a predator circling prey. Ranger growled, hackles raised, tail stiff. He wasn't some random stray tonight. He was an alarm, a siren with fur. The man lunged. Imani reacted first. She slammed her shoulder into the attacker, shoving him sideways with raw desperation. The blade sliced downward, scraping sparks off the asphalt instead of flesh. Ranger barked so hard it made her ears ring. Adler seized the opening. He pivoted and yanked the man's wrist down, slamming it against the hood of the Charger. The knife clattered across the pavement, spinning until it skidded into the gutter where rainwater carried it toward the drain. For a heartbeat, it seemed over. Then the driver inside the Charger finally moved. His phone lit up in his hand. He wasn't dialing, he was already reading something. Adler shoved the hooded man against the car, snapping cuffs around his wrists in one fluid motion. The attacker didn't resist. He just smiled, rain dripping from his hood. Imani caught a glimpse of the phone screen through the windshield. One line of text glowed in bold white. Make it look random. Her stomach turned cold. This wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. This was planned.
Backup sirens pierced through the storm, growing louder as patrol units closed in. Adler kept one knee in the attacker's back, keeping him pinned against the slick hood until other officers swarmed the scene. "Get him in the car," Adler ordered, his voice steady but strained. He didn't look at Imani. Not yet. Imani's hands shook, but not from the cold. She had felt the knife's breath pass her cheek. She had shoved a man twice her size, with no plan for what would come after. It was survival without thought, instinct leading the way. One of the backup officers dragged the cuffed man toward a squad car. He didn't fight. He didn't plead. He just kept smiling at Imani, as though she had walked straight into something she didn't understand. "Ma'am, you injured?" another officer asked. Imani shook her head, still catching her breath. "No, I'm fine." But Adler wasn't convinced. He studied her hands, scraped from hitting the pavement when she lunged. Blood streaked her knuckles, mixing with the rain. "You need a hospital," he said. "No," Imani answered firmly. "Don't waste the time." She accepted a wool blanket from the trunk of his patrol car instead, wrapping it around her soaked shoulders. Adler narrowed his eyes. "You've done this before." Imani avoided the question. She wasn't about to explain her past EMT training, or the way she still carried those reflexes. That life felt buried under debt and diner shifts. Tonight, though, it had clawed its way back up. 2 more squad cars blocked off the road. Flashing lights reflected off the puddles, bathing the entire scene in red and blue. The Charger's driver was pulled from the car next. Unlike the hooded man, he didn't smirk. He looked hollow, almost scared, like he had been a pawn rather than a player. Then the cuffed attacker laughed, low and rough, as though the whole thing amused him. He turned his head just enough to make eye contact with Adler and said words that landed like a gut punch. "You weren't the target, officer." He shifted his gaze to Imani. The world seemed to stop.
The words echoed in Imani's mind as the rain hammered down, not the target. Her throat tightened. She wanted to ask why. Why her? She was nobody, a waitress cut from hours, a tenant dodging eviction. Why would anyone mark her? Adler stepped closer, his presence steady. "What do you mean?" he demanded, voice sharp. The hooded man grinned, water dripping down his chin. He didn't answer. Instead, he let the silence hang like bait. One of the backup officers shoved him into the back of the cruiser, slamming the door. The window fogged instantly, his shadowed outline still visible. That grin never faded. Adler turned to Imani. "You need to give a full statement, tonight." Imani wrapped the blanket tighter. She didn't argue, but she couldn't shake the unease building inside her. Whoever this man was, he hadn't cared about Adler's badge. His eyes had been on her. A delivery van slowed as it passed, the driver hanging out the window, phone raised to film. "Hey, is this going to be on the news?" he called. Adler snapped back. "Keep moving." The van rolled away, taillights glowing red as they vanished into the mist. Imani's thoughts churned. If this footage spread online, the story would take on its own life. Strangers would debate it, twist it, question why a diner waitress was in the middle of a roadside assault. Ranger pressed against her leg, shaking water off his coat. His eyes stayed fixed on the squad car where the attacker sat. He didn't bark now, he didn't growl, but the tension in his body told her everything. This wasn't finished. Adler finally met her eyes. "You saved me, back there." I swallowed. "No, I reacted. That's all." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just reaction. Something bigger had pulled her into that moment, something she hadn't yet put together.
At the precinct later that night, the fluorescent lights felt too bright after the storm. Officers bustled around, writing reports, hanging wet jackets, swapping fragments of what they'd heard. Imani sat across from Adler in the interview room, blankets still wrapped around her shoulders. A cup of coffee steamed untouched in front of her. He asked for her statement, pen ready. She gave it, every detail she could remember. The charger, the knife, the text on the phone, the words, "make it look random," and finally the smirk, the grin that seemed aimed only at her. Adler listened, writing in sharp strokes. When she finished, he tapped the pen against the page. "You're leaving something out." She looked up. "No, that's everything." He leaned forward. "The way you moved, the way you called it before it happened, that wasn't chance." Imani's silence was answer enough. She didn't want him digging into her past. Not tonight. The door opened. Another officer stepped in with a bagged piece of evidence, the attacker's burner phone. Adler scrolled through the most recent messages. Every line chilled him. Next shift. Make it clean. No hospitals. Target. Wells. Adler looked at her. "That's you." Her pulse raced. Someone had put her name in a phone tied to roadside assaults, and tonight she had stepped into the middle of it all. She gripped the blanket tighter, her voice dropping. "Why me?" No one had an answer. Outside, Ranger barked once in the hall, a sound that carried more warning than comfort. The officer who brought the phone muttered, "This doesn't feel random at all." Adler closed the file, his jaw clenched. "You're right." He turned back to Imani. This is only the beginning. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. She had walked out of the diner tonight with nothing but bills on her mind. Now she was in the center of something bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than she could have imagined.
He said she wasn't the target, so who was really behind it? And why was Imani's name on that phone? Subscribe to Goodness Corner now so you don't miss the next chapter. If you were in her shoes, would you tell the cop everything or keep some secrets? Comment below. I'm watching for your answers. The Harbor Light Diner never truly slept.
Even at 1 in the morning, the smell of frying bacon clung to the air and the jukebox in the corner hummed with a low, static-filled tune. A couple of night shift nurses sipped coffee in the back booth. A trucker ate scrambled eggs alone. And in the kitchen, plates clattered as if the night were perfectly ordinary. But Imani knew better. She sat at the counter, palms still raw and bandaged from earlier, staring into a cup of decaf she hadn't touched. Her body was there, but her thoughts ran wild. Her landlord, Mr. Keating, had called an hour ago. His grovelly voice had no patience. Final notice, rent or out. She had hung up without answering, throat thick. She couldn't tell him she had nearly been killed or that strangers with knives apparently knew her name. None of that mattered to men like him. From the doorway, a familiar voice cut through the diner noise. "You're a hard woman to track down." Officer Grant Adler stepped in, rain still dripping from his jacket. He scanned the room like cops do, eyes sharp, then slid into the seat across from her. He carried a file folder under his arm, but his focus was on her. "I need your statement cleaned up," he said. "The captain wants everything on record." Imani straightened, bracing herself. But what he noticed wasn't her posture, it was her precision. The way she described the knife, the angle, the driver's stillness, the attacker's timing. She spoke like someone who had trained for emergencies, not like a waitress wiping down tables. Adler narrowed his eyes. "You're sure you've never worked the field?" Imani looked away. "I told you what I saw, that's all." Before he could press further, Elena Vargas, the diner manager, walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. She lowered her voice. "Imani, someone's been coming around asking about our late shifts. Said he wanted to know who works nights. I didn't like it." Imani froze. Adler sat up straighter. "When?" "Past couple nights, didn't leave a name." Elena's eyes darted nervously toward the windows. "I thought it was weird, but I didn't know it was this serious." Imani's stomach dropped. Someone had been watching, asking questions. She wasn't paranoid anymore. This was real. The TV above the counter flickered to life, the local news crawl streaming across the bottom. Adler's head turned just in time to read the headline. "Police seek silver Civic in connection to staged roadside assaults." The camera cut to a blurry photo from a dashcam, silver, 4-door, partial license plate visible. Imani's breath caught. She knew that car. It had been parked outside the diner earlier tonight.
The diner's bell jingled. The sound carried like a warning. Imani's eyes darted to the glass door. The room seemed to hold its breath. And there it was, idling at the curb outside. A silver Civic, headlights washing across the diner windows. "That's it," she whispered, pointing. "That's the car from the report." Adler didn't hesitate. He slid out of the booth, hand near his sidearm, eyes fixed on the vehicle. The driver's silhouette sat still, motionless behind the wheel. "Stay inside," Adler ordered, his tone low and sharp. But Imani didn't sit still. She rose, heart pounding, stepping closer to the counter where she had a clear line of sight to the car. Ranger, who had followed her into the diner after the chaos outside, let out a growl so deep it made the trucker in the corner look up from his plate. Elena moved to switch off the lights, but Adler shook his head. "No sudden changes. Let me see what he does." The Civic didn't move. Its engine hummed steady, exhaust curling into the night air. Adler edged toward the door, shoulders squared, ready for anything. Imani leaned closer to the window, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver's face. The rain streaked across the glass, blurring the outline, but something about the stillness sent a shiver through her. Then, the car door cracked open. Imani gasped, but no one stepped out. Instead, a folded piece of paper fluttered onto the wet pavement, weighed down by a small metal key. The driver's hand withdrew, the door shut, and the Civic peeled away, tires spitting water. Adler rushed outside, scooping up the paper and key before the rain destroyed them. He unfolded the page under the diner's awning. The message was scrawled in thick black marker, letters uneven. "Debt must be paid.
She knows why. Imani's chest tightened. The words felt like a blade to the ribs. Debt. Paid. Why her? She stepped outside, blanket still clutched around her. "Let me see it," she demanded. Adler hesitated, but handed it over. Her eyes traced the words, and a memory struck. A medical bill from years ago, after her brother's accident. Thousands she couldn't cover. Collection notices. A fight she had buried under endless shifts. "Is this connected?" Adler asked, voice low. Imani didn't answer right away. The truth was, she didn't know. But whoever left that note believed she had a debt to settle, and they weren't going away. Ranger barked sharply, spinning toward the shadows across the street. A figure darted between two parked cars, vanishing before Adler could react. The key clinked in Adler's hand. What the hell does this open?
Back inside, Adler spread the note and key across the counter. Other officers had been called, but none had arrived yet. The diner felt like a stage with too many eyes watching and not enough answers. Elena locked the doors, her hands trembling. "Imani, I don't want you walking home. Not tonight. Not with this hanging over us." Imani agreed, but her pride resisted showing it. She had never liked being someone else's problem. Adler examined the key under the overhead light. "Not for a car," he muttered. "Too short. Looks like storage, or maybe a locker." Imani's mind raced. Storage? She thought back to her brother Quentin and the night he disappeared years ago. He had mentioned leaving things behind, journals, maybe even recordings, before everything in their lives fell apart. Could this be linked? Or was that reaching for patterns where none existed? "Let me run this," Adler said, pocketing the key. He didn't wait for her objection. Imani stared at the note again. Debt must be paid. She knows why. She wanted to scream. She wanted to demand answers from someone, anyone. But all she could do was sit and replay the words. The trucker in the corner broke the silence, muttering, "Don't get mixed up in this, miss. Some things ain't worth it." Imani turned on him, anger boiling. What if it was your name on that note? The man dropped his gaze to his plate. Shame cut off his words. Adler returned from a brief call on his radio. His jaw was tight. That Civic's plates came back stolen. Whoever's driving it doesn't want to be found. Imani's heart sank. This wasn't over. The people behind this weren't amateurs. Ranger whined softly, pressing against her leg. She scratched his damp fur, grateful for his silent loyalty. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new text. She opened it, hands trembling. "The key belongs to him. Don't lose it." Her stomach flipped. No name, no explanation, but whoever had sent it knew she had the key. Adler leaned over, reading the text with her. His face hardened. Who is him? Imani shook her head, voice barely audible. I don't know. An hour later, Imani sat in her booth again, staring at the key on the counter as if it could answer everything. The diner had emptied out, leaving only Elena and a lone rookie officer posted by the door. Adler stood near the window, watching the rain-slick street for any sign of the Civic returning. His mind was spinning as much as hers. This wasn't just about a random assault. Someone had targeted her, and they wanted her to know it. Imani's phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. If you tell the cops more than you should, you'll regret it. Her chest tightened. Whoever this was, they were watching her even now. Adler caught the look on her face. What is it? She hesitated, then handed him the phone. His jaw flexed as he read. They're trying to scare you into silence. Imani whispered, It's working. Silence hung heavy between them until the rookie officer called out, Sir, you'll want to see this. Adler strode over. Parked directly across the street in plain sight was another silver Civic. Same make, same model, but this one had a different plate. Two of them, Adler muttered. They're doubling the pressure.
Imani's pulse pounded in her ears. Whoever these people were, they weren't just circling. They were sending a message. She wasn't safe anywhere. Her mind flashed back to the note. Debt must be paid, and then to the text. The key belongs to him. Her brother's face surfaced in her memory, sharper than it had in years. Could he still be alive? Or was someone using his ghost to break her? Before she could ask, Ranger let out a long, piercing bark that rattled the diner windows. Everyone turned. The second Civic's headlights blinked once, then twice, like a signal. And then it sped off into the night. Imani gripped the key in her hand so tight the ridges cut into her palm. Whatever door it opened, she knew one thing for certain. It was tied to her past, her family, and the reasons strangers wanted her name buried. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was personal.
They dropped a note, a key, and a threat, but no answers. Who do you think the key belongs to? Drop your theories in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if you want to find out before anyone else, subscribe to Goodness Corner now. The next twist could be the one that changes everything. The morning after felt nothing like daylight. Baltimore's sky was low and gray, heavy with clouds that threatened another storm. From the cracked asphalt of I-95 North, the world looked washed out, except for the neon orange of an abandoned way station just off the exit. Officer Grant Adler parked his patrol car near the rusting building. He'd been ordered off the case, told to let Highway Patrol handle it, but orders were easier to give than to follow. Imani Wells stepped out beside him, Ranger padding close at her heel. The stray hadn't left her side since that night, as though he knew she was now a marked piece on someone's board. Adler's contact from Major Crimes, Detective Keon Parrish, was already there, leaning against an unmarked sedan. He raised a hand in greeting, his smile too relaxed for the tension in the air. "Appreciate you two coming out here, but I'll be straight with you. This is off your plate now. Let Highway Patrol box it up." Imani folded her arms. "And just pretend someone isn't hunting me?" Parrish shrugged. "Sometimes letting go keeps you alive." Adler didn't answer. He scanned the way station's cracked windows, the dark interior, the faded Maryland DOT decals peeling off the walls. Something about the site felt wrong, staged even. Ranger's ears flicked. The shepherd bolted toward a broken fence at the rear. Imani followed, boots splashing through mud. Behind the fence, half buried under wet gravel, lay a neon utility vest. She picked it up and shook it out. The patch across the chest read Maryland TOT, except the stitching was sloppy. The patch was a fake. Adler took the vest, jaw tightening. Somebody's playing highway worker. Parrish let out a slow whistle. Could be stolen, could be planted. Imani frowned. Or both. Before they could argue, the roar of an 18-wheeler filled the air. A delivery truck barreled past on I-95 North, its dash cam pointed right at the pull-off. The driver honked once, startled to see cops at a dead way station. Imani's mind sparked. That truck's camera. It would have caught who came through here. Adler nodded. "I'll request the footage." Ranger barked again, this time at a pile of busted crates near the way station's rear door. Adler crouched, lifting the top. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were prepaid cards, a voice changer, and a small evidence bag streaked with glowing residue. He held it up to the light. The faint smear shone purple under the drizzle. "UV dye," Adler muttered. Imani's stomach dropped. She'd seen it before during EMT training, used for tracking, invisible until the right light hit. Adler turned his sleeve under the glow. The seams of his uniform lit faintly. He looked at her, realization striking him cold. I was marked.
Silence pressed down heavier than the clouds. For a long moment, no one moved. The smear glowed faintly, accusing and undeniable. Imani's mind raced. Someone had brushed Adler's jacket with UV dye before the attack. Someone close enough to touch him without raising alarm. Parrish broke the silence. "You sure that isn't cross-contamination, maybe from evidence storage?" Adler shook his head. "This is fresh. I wore this jacket yesterday. Whoever marked me did it in the last 24 hours. Imani folded her arms tighter, trying to keep the chill out. So the attacker wasn't guessing. He knew where to aim. Adler nodded grimly. Ranger pawed at the crates again, restless. Imani crouched beside him and found another clue. A crumpled receipt, damp but legible. It was stamped from a hardware store on Hanover Street. Time-stamped 2 days ago. Adler pocketed it. That's 2 blocks from your diner. Her chest tightened. The circle was closing in, and the diner, the only place she thought she had control, was part of the web. Parrish pulled out his phone. Let me get Highway Patrol to process this. We're out of our lane here. But Imani caught the look on Adler's face. He wasn't letting go, not after finding dye on his own jacket. They left the way station, heading back toward the interstate. Traffic roared, ordinary life zooming past as if none of this mattered. But to Imani, every truck, every car felt like it might be carrying eyes on her. Half an hour later, Adler pulled up the requested dashcam footage from the delivery truck. On screen, blurry but visible, was the silver Civic. It followed Adler's patrol car for 3 exits before peeling off near the way station. Stalking you, Imani said quietly. Adler exhaled. And I never noticed. She studied the frame again. At first, it was just headlights and shadows. But then she spotted it. The faint reflection of another car's hood parked behind the Civic. Not random. Someone else was shadowing the shadow. Adler froze the frame. 2 cars, coordinated. Imani's gut twisted. This wasn't sloppy intimidation. It was an operation. Ranger pressed against her leg, whimpering softly. The shepherd felt the shift even before she did.
Back at Central District, Adler and Imani sat in the break room, the hum of vending machines filling the silence. The utility vest lay bagged on the table. The UV smear evidence sat beside it, glowing faintly under a portable lamp. Captain Rhodes entered, his presence commanding as always. He studied the evidence, then Adler. I told you to step back from this case. Adler didn't flinch. Sir, someone marked me. That's not Highway Patrol's problem. That's ours. Rhodes exhaled through his nose, folding his arms. You've already got eyes on you, Adler. The misconduct hearing next week. You add this, and it looks like you're chasing shadows to dodge your own heat. Imani watched the exchange, biting her tongue. She wasn't part of the department, but she could see what was happening. Rhodes wanted this buried. Adler's jaw tightened. With respect, sir, we can't ignore this. Someone planned it. Someone inside knew my roots. That vest didn't land at a way station by accident. Rhodes leaned closer. And what's the civilian's role here? He gestured toward Imani. Before Adler could answer, she spoke. The attacker knew my name. He left notes, texts. Whoever's behind this isn't just after him. They're after me too. Rhodes studied her for a long moment. Then you'd better start asking yourself why. The words landed heavier than intended. Imani looked away, ashamed of how little she actually knew. Her past, her brother's disappearance, the unpaid bills, the secrets she never voiced, suddenly felt like open doors someone else had walked through. The captain left, leaving the evidence glowing like a warning. Adler broke the silence. He's wrong about one thing. You didn't invite this. Imani managed a bitter laugh. Doesn't matter. Feels like I'm paying the bill anyway. Ranger barked suddenly, startling them both. The dog was staring at the window, ears pinned back. Outside, across the street, a man in a city worker vest leaned against a lamppost. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't on the phone. He was just staring. Adler reached for his radio.
By the time he looked back, the man was gone.
The hardware store receipt led them to Hanover Street later that evening. The shop was still open, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The clerk barely looked up as Adler flashed his badge. "Yeah, I remember that guy," the clerk said, pointing at the security monitor. "Bought a dozen UV markers, paid cash, didn't say a word." On the grainy playback, the man wore a diner cap, one Adler recognized instantly. "Imani," he said quietly, "that's Alina's spare cap, the one she keeps in the back room." Imani's chest tightened. "But she told me she never gave it out." The implication stung. Someone close had headed over access. Whether Alina knew or not, didn't matter. The net was tightening. Adler grabbed the printed footage and stepped out into the night. The air felt thicker now, heavier with truth. This isn't just intimidation anymore. It's inside help. Imani rubbed her temples. Every corner of her life, the diner, the street, even Adler's uniform was tangled in this mess. There was no safe ground left. As they crossed the street, headlights flared. A silver Civic creeped past, windows tinted black. The driver didn't stop, didn't speed, just coasted slow enough for them to see it, to feel it. Imani's heart slammed in her chest. The Civic turned the corner and vanished. She whispered, "They want us to know they're watching." Adler's voice was tight. "Good, let them watch, because now we're watching back." Ranger barked once, sharp, echoing off the buildings. The sound carried like a promise.
The vest was fake, the dye was real, and the betrayal, that just cut deeper. Who do you think handed over Elena's diner cap? And why? Drop your theories below and subscribe to Goodness Corner now so you don't miss the truth when it comes out. The next chapter could flip everything upside down. The walls of Baltimore's Central District Precinct buzzed with noise. Phones ringing, printers humming, radio spitting fragments of chaos from every corner of the city. But in the small break room, it was just Adler and Imani, a stale pot of coffee between them. Imani rubbed her temples. She hadn't slept since the diner. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glow of UV dye on Adler's jacket and the silver Civic sliding away into the night. Adler slid a folded memo across the table. "This hit my desk this morning." She unfolded it. The words were blunt. "Notice of testimony. Officer Grant Adler to appear in misconduct hearing, Inner Harbor contract security case." Imani frowned. "Misconduct? Against you?" Adler shook his head. "Not me. Contractors. Off-duty cops moonlighting at the Inner Harbor. They roughed up a civilian, and I was the one who filed the report. Now I'm supposed to testify." Imani studied him. "And you think all of this," she gestured at the evidence bag, "is connected to that?" Adler's silence was answer enough. Before she could press, the break room door opened. A woman in jeans and a weather-beaten jacket slipped inside, camera bag slung over her shoulder. Maya Pritchard, freelance reporter. Her eyes scanned the table, landing on the bagged vest. Word is, somebody out there doesn't want Adler testifying, and when people don't want cops talking, it's usually bigger than a few paychecks. Adler tensed. "How do you know about this?" Maya smirked. "Because I know who's been following you." She pulled out her phone and swiped. On screen was a series of stills, grainy but clear enough. A man in a diner cap, lurking near Adler's car 2 days before the first attack. Imani's breath caught. She recognized that cop immediately. Elena's.
The photo stung more than she expected. Imani remembered Elena's face, the worry in her voice when she admitted someone had been asking about night shifts. Could her manager, her friend, have been the leak all along? Adler leaned closer to the photo. "Where'd you get this?" Traffic cam picked it up while chasing a different story. Didn't know it mattered until now. Imani's voice dropped. "That cap isn't sold anywhere. Elena keeps a spare in the diner's back room for staff. No one should have it." Adler's jaw tightened. Inside help. The words made Imani's stomach twist. Elena had been her shield at work, defending her from rude customers and cutting her extra slices of pie when shifts dragged along. If Elena was part of this, then Imani had no safe ground left.
Maya studied Imani. "You look like you've been blindsided." "Because I have." Adler stepped in, his tone calm. "We don't know Elena's involved. That cap could have been stolen." But even as he said it, doubt weighed in his voice. Ranger padded to the doorway, ears perked. He let out a short bark, one, then two. It wasn't random. He'd picked up a rhythm. Maya glanced down at the dog. "He's got better instincts than most detectives." Adler gathered the photo and the memo. "If someone's leaking details, we'll find out. But first, I need to figure out how deep this hearing goes. The harbor contracts, millions of dollars, backroom deals, payoffs. If my testimony sticks, people lose money. A lot of it." Imani felt the weight settle. "And if it doesn't stick?" Adler met her eyes. "Then people like me disappear."
That night, Adler parked on the upper level of a downtown parking deck. The city lights shimmered against the harbor, casting ripples of gold across the water. From here, Baltimore looked calm, honest even. But Adler knew better. Imani leaned against the railing, blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. She had insisted on coming, even though he warned her it wasn't safe. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why drag me into this?" Adler shook his head. "You're already in it. Whoever's pulling the strings, they've tied your name to it. They want you scared enough to stay quiet. Same with me." She thought of the note pinned under the key. Debt must be paid. The words gnawed at her. Adler's phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered, but the line hissed with static. Then a voice, distorted. "Walk away, Adler, or next time it won't just be die." The call cut. Imani shivered. Ranger pressed against her leg, eyes fixed on the shadows of the deck. "Does this happen a lot?" she asked. "More than you think," Adler muttered. Footsteps echoed. They turned to see Parrish striding across the deck. He carried a paper bag, greasy at the bottom. "Figured you'd need dinner," he said casually. Adler narrowed his eyes. "How do you know I was here?" Parrish grinned. "I know your routines." Something in the answer made Imani's skin prickle. Later, back at her apartment, Imani sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the photo Maya had given them. The man in the cap stood near Adler's car, his face blurred but posture steady. Whoever he was, he didn't look like someone just passing by. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the blocked number. "Your waitress friend lied. Don't trust her." Her chest clenched. Elena again. She wanted to ignore it, to believe Elena was innocent, but the evidence kept stacking up. Down the hall, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Ranger's ears shot up, growl rising deep in his chest. Imani held her breath. Shadows shifted under the crack of her door. Then, silence. Whoever it was, they moved on. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a photo. It showed her apartment door. Tonight. She dropped the phone, heart pounding. Adler, sitting at the small kitchen table, scooped it up. His jaw clenched as he stared at the image. They're in the building. Imani felt sick. They're watching everything. He pocketed the phone and reached for his sidearm. Then we watch back, and when they slip, we'll be ready. But his words didn't calm her, because in her gut, she knew the truth. They weren't just marking Adler anymore. They were marking her. A diner cap, a blurred face, and a photo of her own door. Imani's circle is closing fast. Who do you think betrayed her trust? Comment below and don't miss what happens when the truth cracks open. Subscribe to Goodness Corner now. The next reveal might change everything. The Harbor Light Diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease the next morning, but to Imani, it smelled of betrayal. She pushed through the swinging door into the back hall, Ranger trailing close, nose low to the floor.
Elena met her there, hair tied up, apron already stained. She tried for a smile, but it didn't land. Rough night? Imani didn't answer. She walked straight to the staff lockers. Her hands trembled as she dug through the pile until she found the one she wanted, the spare diner cap. Except it wasn't there. Elena, she said flatly, where's the hat? Her manager froze. What do you mean? The extra cap. You keep it back here. It's gone. Elena's brow furrowed. No one touches that closet but me. Imani's voice sharpened. Then how was someone photographed wearing it? Elena's face drained of color. She looked like a woman caught between lies and truths she wasn't ready to speak. Before she could press further, Ranger pawed at the rusted fire door at the end of the hall. His nails scraped metal, ears pricked, body tense. Imani followed, kneeling low. She pried open the warped door and reached behind a stack of boxes. Her fingers hit something taped to the wall. She peeled it free. A thick envelope. Inside, laminated contractor badges with different names, all stamped with city maintenance logos. And tucked between them, a small USB stick. Her stomach flipped. She didn't need Adler to tell her this was wrong. She slid it into her pocket just as the front doorbell jingled, announcing a new customer. Elena stepped back, panic flickering in her eyes. Don't tell him you found that, Elena whispered. Are you protecting me or protecting them? Elena's silence was answer enough. The customer wasn't here for eggs and toast. He was tall, wearing a city worker vest, hands shoved deep into his pockets as he slid into a booth. He didn't glance at a menu. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on Imani. Adler wasn't with her. He'd been called to the courthouse. That left her alone, except for Ranger at her side. Imani grabbed a coffee pot and approached like it was any other order. Her heart raced, but she forced her voice steady. Coffee? The man's smile was thin, black, just like the last time. Her grip tightened on the pot. She had never seen him before. You've been busy, he said quietly, digging where you don't belong, picking up things you shouldn't touch. Imani set the cup down hard enough to slosh. If you've got something to say, say it. His smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. There's more than one Civic. You figured that out, didn't you? That's because we don't work alone. And if you're not careful, Waitress, you'll end up under one of them. Ranger growled low, his hackles stiff. Imani leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear. Then why warn me? He shrugged. Because sometimes fear works better than knives. He tossed a few bills on the table, untouched coffee steaming. Then he stood up, brushing past her. As he left, he murmured, That key you've got? It doesn't open a door. It opens a past you don't want. Imani froze, her blood turning cold. He knew about the key. Elena rushed over as soon as he left. I told you, don't tell anyone what you found. Imani snapped. Are you protecting me or protecting them? Elena's silence was answer enough.
That evening, Imani met Adler in a quiet corner of Patterson Park. Kids still played on the swings, but the sky was already dimming, painted with streaks of purple and red. She pulled the USB from her pocket and pressed it into his hand. Found this in the diner's back room. Adler stared at it, then at her. You kept this quiet all day? She nodded. Elena begged me not to say anything. She knew it was there. I don't know if she planted it or if someone forced her, but she's involved. Adler plugged the stick into his laptop. Video files loaded, each labeled with a date. They clicked through the first one. A dashcam view, a quiet road, 2 cars staged in the lane like they'd collided. Then the feed cut off before impact. The next file was the same, and the next. Every clip showed staged accidents, faked crashes, and every time the footage stopped right before the violence hit. Imani's hands shook. Why record this? Adler's voice was grim. To train people, to study responses, to make it look clean when it's not.
The final clip froze both of them. It showed Adler's patrol car, the silver Civic tailing behind, and in the reflection of a window near the tripod, Adler's former partner, Lance Corbett. Imani's breath caught. That's him. Clear as day. Adler shut the laptop hard, his jaw locked. He told me he had nothing to do with this. Imani whispered. Looks like he lied. Night fell heavy over Baltimore. Adler drove Imani back toward Light Street. Ranger curled in the back seat. Neither spoke. The weight of what they'd seen on that USB pressed down like a stone. When they pulled up near her apartment, Adler killed the engine but didn't move. Corbett was my partner. We worked side by side for years. If he's involved, Imani cut in, then he knows everything about you. Your habits, your blind spots, even what you'll ignore. Adler clenched the steering wheel. And if Parrish is covering for him, that means this goes higher than I thought. Imani's phone buzzed, another blocked number. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was short. He's not who you think. Check the back lot, 11 p.m. She showed Adler. His shoulders tensed. Back lot? Of the diner? Imani nodded slowly. They waited until the hour passed, then drove together to Harbor Lights lot. The diner was dark, closed early. Ranger leapt out first, nose to the ground. At the far corner of the lot, half hidden behind a dumpster, sat a backpack. Adler opened it carefully. Inside, burner phones, more fake badges, and a roll of cash. And tucked in the side pocket, another cap. Elena's. Imani's chest clenched. Someone was framing her manager, or worse, Elena was neck-deep in the same game. Before she could decide which, headlights washed over them. A car crept into the lot. A silver Civic. Imani's breath froze. The window rolled down, and sitting behind the wheel, eyes cold and steady, Lance Corbett.
The USB exposed Corbett. The backpack tied Elena. And now, Corbett himself is back in the driver's seat. Do you think he's the mastermind? Or just another pawn? Comment your theory and subscribe to Goodness Corner now so you don't miss the next chapter. The truth is only getting darker. The silver Civic idled at the edge of the diner's back lot, headlights slicing through the night. Adler's stomach dropped when he saw the driver's face. Lance Corbett. His former partner. A man who had once pulled him out of a burning row house during a raid. Now those same hands gripped the wheel like a predator weighing his move. Imani's pulse raced. She stood frozen near the dumpster, clutching the backpack of burner phones and fake IDs. Ranger's growl vibrated low, teeth flashing. Corbett stepped out, calm as a man arriving at a Sunday cookout. Grant, didn't expect you'd figure out this fast. Adler squared his stance, every muscle tense. What the hell are you doing here? Corbett's smirk held no warmth. Cleaning up. You've always been too stubborn to walk away. His eyes slid to Imani. And you, always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Imani's fists clenched. Why me? Why does my name keep showing up? Corbett tilted his head, like he enjoyed the question. Some debts echo longer than you think. Before Adler could press, 2 more men stepped from the shadows, both in city worker vests. They flanked Corbett, silent and ready. Imani's gut told her this wasn't a bluff. This was a warning and possibly an ending. Adler's hand hovered near his weapon, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Talk, Adler demanded. Corbett's smile widened. I don't need to talk. You'll see soon enough. And with that, he turned, slid back into the Civic, and drove away. The other 2 melted into the darkness without a sound. The only thing left was the echo of Ranger's growl, and the certainty that trust was a luxury they no longer had. At the precinct the next day, the interview room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Corbett hadn't been brought in. He'd vanished again. But Adler insisted on filing a report anyway. Captain Rhodes listened, stone-faced. You're telling me your ex-partner showed up in a stolen Civic
with two unidentified men, then just drove off? Adler's jaw tightened. Yes. Rhodes shook his head. Grant, you're already on thin ice with the hearing. Without evidence, this just looks like paranoia. Imani slammed her hand on the table. I was there. I saw him. He knew things about me he shouldn't know. Are you going to ignore that too? The captain's gaze shifted to her. Ms. Wells, with respect, you're a civilian. Your testimony doesn't carry the same weight in an internal matter. The words stung. They always did. Adler leaned forward, voice low. So what? You want me to sit quiet while my partner runs an op in city vests, marking me for an attack? The captain didn't answer right away. Finally, he exhaled. Stay off the roads this week. Let me handle Corbett. When the captain left, Imani muttered, He doesn't believe you. Adler shook his head. No, worse. He believes me, but he's scared of where it leads. Ranger barked once. Imani whispered. Then where does it lead? Adler stared at the empty chair across from them. To people who don't want the truth coming out.
That night, Adler insisted on shadowing Imani home. The streets of Fells Point glistened under light rain, neon bars buzzing while crowds spilled out laughing, oblivious to the storm brewing in shadows. As they passed the pier, Imani asked the question she had been holding in. Why would Corbett risk all this? He had a stable career, a badge, respect. Why throw it away? Adler's voice was heavy. Because money talks. The harbor contracts pay triple what the department does. Some guys don't think twice when the cash is easy. Imani shook her head. But this isn't just cash. They're staging attacks. They're marking people. That's not extra work. That's organized. Adler didn't respond. His silence was confirmation enough. They turned down a narrow side street, Ranger tugging at the leash. Suddenly, the shepherd stopped, ears up, tail stiff. His body locked on the alley to their left. A shadow moved. Adler pulled Imani behind him just as a brick shattered against the wall where her head had been seconds earlier. The alley erupted in motion. Two men rushing forward, faces hidden under hoods. Ranger launched first, teeth snapping at one man's sleeve. The attacker yelped, stumbling back. The second lunged at Adler, knife flashing. Adler caught his wrist, twisting hard until the blade clattered onto the pavement. Imani grabbed the weapon, adrenaline surging. She pointed it like a threat, hands shaking. Back off! The attackers froze. Then, as if on cue, both bolted down the alley, disappearing into the maze of streets. Adler exhaled, chest heaving. He looked at Imani, then at the knife in her hand. You just saved me. Again. She swallowed hard, staring at the blade. Feels like they don't want me alive long enough to ask why. The next morning, Imani sat in her apartment staring at the knife bagged and evidence tape on the table. Adler had left hours ago, chasing leads, but the silence in the room pressed down hard. Her phone buzzed. Another blocked number. This time, it was a video. She pressed play. The screen showed the alley from last night, grainy, but clear enough to recognize herself, Adler, and Ranger. The attackers rushing, the knife clattering. Her hands shook. Someone had filmed the entire ambush. At the end of the video, text flashed across the screen. Walk away, or next time we won't miss. Her breath caught. She clutched the phone so tight her knuckles went white. When Adler returned, she showed him the clip. His jaw set, eyes hard. They're documenting everything, like trophies. Imani whispered, or leverage. Ranger pawed at the door, restless. He wanted out. She wanted answers, but right now, all she had was proof that Corbett wasn't alone. He was part of something bigger, something watching them from every angle. Adler pressed his hand to the evidence bag. They wanted you scared enough to stay silent. That means your voice matters more than you think. Imani looked at him, fear mixing with resolve. Then they picked the wrong woman. Outside, another Civic rolled slowly past the building, windows tinted. It didn't stop.
It didn't speed. It just kept moving, leaving silence in its wake. But for the first time, Imani didn't feel invisible. She felt marked. And being marked meant she had power too, if she chose to use it.
Corbett's shadow is everywhere. Ambushes, threats, even cameras in the alleys. But what's worse? That he betrayed Adler, or that someone higher is letting it happen? Comment your thoughts and subscribe to Goodness Corner now so you don't miss the next chapter. The truth is closing in. The Station North Arts District looked harmless under the afternoon sun. Murals splashed across brick walls, coffee shops spilling indie music into the streets. But for Imani Wells, every shadow looked like a camera lens, every stranger's glance a warning. She sat with Adler and Maya Pritchard inside a shared co-working loft above a print shop. Ranger stretched on the floor, his ears flicking at every sound from the stairwell. On the table lay the small USB stick Imani had risked her job to find. Maya plugged it into her laptop, the screen flickering as folders loaded. Most files were locked, labeled with meaningless strings of numbers. But one folder bore a single name: Tasking Sheet. Maya's fingers flew over the keys. A document opened, dent with codes, dates, and assignments. Adler leaned closer, jaw tightening. These are schedules, patrol routes, staged incidents timed to the minute. Imani's pulse quickened as she scanned the page. Several routes were circled in red, every single one of them Adler's. And then she saw it. At the bottom, scrawled like an afterthought: Witness, Quentin Wells. Her breath caught, her brother's name sharp as a knife after years of silence. Adler looked at her, confusion in his eyes. Quentin? Imani's voice trembled. My brother. He disappeared years ago after seeing a hidden run downtown. I thought he was gone for good. Maya sat back, stunned. Then this isn't just intimidation. Whoever wrote this file, they've been tracking your family for years. Imani's hands shook as she clutched the laptop screen, reading the line over and over. If Quentin was listed as a witness, it meant one of two things. He had survived, or someone was using his name to bait her. Ranger lifted his head and barked once, the sound bouncing hard off the studio walls. For the first time in years, hope burned hot and terrifying in Imani's chest. The walk back to her apartment felt heavier than any shift Imani had ever worked. The USB file burned in her pocket like a live coal. She hadn't told Adler everything, not yet. She couldn't. When she opened the door, her apartment looked ransacked. Drawers yanked open, cushions gutted, clothes scattered across the floor. Ranger darted in first, sniffing, growling low. Stay here, Adler ordered, sweeping the rooms. Minutes later, he returned with his jaw set. They searched it, carefully. They weren't looking for cash. Imani's chest tightened. They were looking for the file. But one detail froze her. An old Baltimore City College yearbook left neatly on her table. The rest of the apartment was trashed, but the book looked almost displayed. She flipped it open, pages fluttering until she found a photo. Her brother. Younger, smiling, arms around teammates from the track team. A sticky note jutted from the margin. 2 words written in block letters. Still alive. Imani staggered back, the room tilting. Adler caught her arm. This could be a trick. Tears blurred her vision. Or it's the truth. Her phone buzzed. A new text, blocked number again. Follow the key. Don't trust the badge. She showed Adler. His face darkened. They're trying to split us. Imani hugged the yearbook to her chest. Or they're trying to push me toward him. Imani couldn't stay in the apartment. She felt eyes in every wall. So she and Adler met Nate Ellison, an outreach worker who'd run youth programs years ago, the same man who once mentored Quentin. They sat on folding chairs in the basement of a rec center, the smell of chlorine drifting down from the pool above. Nate frowned as he studied the tasking sheet Maya had decrypted. That's him. I recognize the handwriting. Parrish. He used to help with volunteer work before he made detective, always had his nose in other people's business. Adler cursed under his breath. If Parrish was tied to these files, it meant this wasn't just Corbett freelancing. It was sanctioned. Imani asked, her voice small. Did you ever hear from Quentin after he disappeared? Nate hesitated. A few months ago I heard rumors. Somebody said they saw him near the Patapasco rail yard, but by the time I checked, he was gone.
The name hit Adler like a hammer. The rail yard was notorious for off-the-books storage, places where stolen cars, weapons, even people could vanish. Imani gripped the key that had been left under the note days ago. Could it belong there? Her thoughts churned. If Quentin had been taken, was he still alive? Or had his name become another tool to control her? Ranger lifted his head and barked once, the sound bouncing hard off the studio walls. Adler opened the door just enough to see a man slip away into the shadows, phone raised like he'd been recording. Imani swift crawled. They weren't just being hunted. They were being documented.
Imani couldn't stay in the apartment. She felt eyes in every wall. So she and Adler met Nate Ellison, an outreach worker who'd run youth programs years ago, the same man who once mentored Quentin. They sat on folding chairs in the basement of a rec center, the smell of chlorine drifting down from the pool above. Nate frowned as he studied the tasking sheet Maya had decrypted. That's him. I recognize the handwriting. Parrish. He used to help with volunteer work before he made detective. Always had his nose in other people's business. Adler cursed under his breath. If Parrish was tied to these files, it meant this wasn't just Corbett freelancing. It was sanctioned. Imani asked, her voice small, "Did you ever hear from Quentin after he disappeared?" Nate hesitated. "A few months later, I heard rumors. Somebody said they saw him near the Patapsco rail yard, but by the time I checked, he was gone." The name hit Adler like a hammer. The rail yard was notorious for off-the-book storage, places where stolen cars, weapons, even people could vanish. Imani gripped the key that had been left under the note days ago. Could it belong there? Her thoughts churned. If Quentin had been taken, was he still alive, or had his name become another tool to control her? Ranger let out a sharp bark, startling them all. He pawed at the door, nose pressed to the gap. Adler stood, hand on his weapon. He opened the door just enough to see a man slip away into the shadows, phone raised like he'd been recording. Imani's skin crawled. They weren't just being hunted, they were being documented. That night, Imani couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the yearbook open, Ranger curled at her feet. Every creak in the hallway made her jump. At 3 a.m., she checked her phone again. Another text waited. This one came with an image attached. It was Quentin. Not a memory, not an old photo. A current shot. He looked older, gaunt, hair longer, but unmistakably him. He stood in front of a corrugated metal door, tonight's newspaper in his hand. Her breath hitched. He's alive. Adler leaned over her shoulder, eyes scanning the photo. Or someone staged this. "No," she whispered, touching the screen. "That's him. I know it." The text message had only 2 more words. Trade soon. Adler's face hardened. They want leverage. They know we'll chase this, and they'll use him as bait. Imani's heart split in two, fear and hope tearing her apart. For years, she had mourned Quentin in silence. Now the possibility of him alive brought both relief and terror. Ranger stirred, ears twitching. He looked toward the window and barked sharply. Across the street, headlights flickered once, then vanished. Adler muttered, "They're watching to see if you take the bait." Imani clutched the yearbook tighter, her voice trembling, but fierce. "I don't care if it's bait. If he's alive, I'm not leaving him." The weight of her vow hung heavy in the room. A file with her brother's name, a photo that proves he's alive, or a trap. Would you take the risk or walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Goodness Corner now, because the next chapter will force Imani to choose. Patterson Park pulsed with life that Saturday. Families filled the green field, food trucks lined the edge, Orioles caps bobbed in the crowd, and children darted between booths clutching dripping snowballs in neon colors. Music blasted from a mobile stage, a DJ hyping the block event into a celebration of community. Imani Wells stood near the funnel cake truck, but her smile was forced. Every cheer, every laugh, every balloon felt like camouflage hiding something darker. Ranger pressed close to her leg, ears twitching, tail stiff. Officer Grant Adler scanned the crowd from a few feet away, his gaze sharp and restless. This is the worst place for them to make a move. Too many witnesses. Or the best, Imani replied.
Her eyes swept the sea of people. If they want chaos, they've got it right here. The plan was simple. Bait the hunters into revealing themselves. Tyrell Hins, the rideshare driver with a knack for dashcam surveillance, had rigged his car to stream live to Maya Pritchard's laptop. She sat on the edge of the park, eyes fixed on the feed, ready to broadcast proof of any staged attack. Elena Vargas had come too, guilt etched deep into her face. She'd confessed the night before. Someone had pressured her into handing over diner schedules in exchange for extra security pay. She swore she hadn't known the real endgame. Now she hovered beside Imani, wringing her hands. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. Imani didn't look at her. "Maybe not. But if you want to make it right, you'll stay." The crowd surged as the DJ announced raffle prizes. Kids screamed with delight. The sound should have felt safe, normal. Instead, Imani's stomach twisted tighter. Because in the corner of the park, a man in a city worker vest was walking straight toward Adler, shoulders squared, eyes locked, a glint of metal in his hand. Adler caught the glint at the last second. The man's fist tightened around a stun baton, its tip sparking faint blue. The crowd's cheers masked the hum. "Back!" Adler barked, pushing bystanders aside. He braced for the hit, but before the man closed the gap, Ranger lunged. The shepherd's teeth sank into the man's sleeve, dragging his arm wide. The baton discharged harmlessly into the air, crackling like fireworks. Screams erupted. Parents pulled kids close. Vendors abandoned their booths. Panic rippled across the park. Imani sprinted toward Adler, heart hammering. She expected backup to swarm, but when she looked around, she froze. Two more men in city worker vests weren't going for Adler. They were moving in on her. One flank from the left, the other from the right, boxing her in near the snowball stand. Their pace wasn't rushed. It was confident, deliberate. Elena screamed, "Imani!" She tried to push through the crowd, but the flow of panicked families shoved her back. Tyrell's car, parked along Eastern Avenue, angled its dashcam toward the chaos. From his seat, he muttered into his mic, "I got this, whole thing's recording." Imani's body tensed. She had seconds to choose, run and draw them away or stand her ground in the crush of terrified neighbors. The first man reached for her arm. She spun away, slamming his hand into the metal snowball cart. The clang drew gasps. The second man stepped closer, whispering so only she could hear. "You were warned. Walk away." Imani shoved him back with both hands. The crowd surged between them, breaking the standoff for a heartbeat. But when the bodies shifted and she looked up again, her breath caught. Across the curb, parked deliberately, a black SUV with state plates idled. And in the passenger seat, Detective Keon Parrish stared at her, his expression cold, calculating. Imani's chest clenched. Parrish wasn't just brushing shoulders with the scheme. He was watching it unfold, as calm as a spectator at a ball game. Adler shoved the man with the stun baton onto the ground, wrenching his arm until the device skittered across the pavement. But when he looked up, he followed Imani's gaze straight to the SUV. His stomach sank. Parrish. The detective lifted his phone, tapping something on the screen. The SUV door never opened, the vehicle didn't speed away. It simply sat, engine humming, while chaos swallowed the park. Maya's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got the SUV on camera. Livestream is running. Everyone online is seeing this right now." Tyrell whooped from his car. "Then let's make them famous." Adler dragged the stunned attacker to his knees, cuffing him fast. The man muttered under his breath, "You think you're saving anyone? You're the one on the list. Adler, you and her both." Imani yanked him by the collar. "What list? Who wrote it?" The man laughed bitterly. "Ask your brother." Her world tilted. "Quentin?" But before she could press, the second vest-wearing man shoved through the panicked crowd, swinging a chain toward her head. Ranger intercepted, teeth snapping down, dragging him off balance. Parents screamed, children cried, vendors abandoned their booths. Adler fired a warning shot into the air. The crack shattered the noise, forcing everyone to freeze. "Police, get back!" The SUV's headlights flickered twice, then it pulled slowly away, as if the message had already been delivered. Imani's hands trembled. Parrish wasn't hiding anymore. He wanted her to see him.
Imani's chest clenched. Parrish wasn't just brushing shoulders with this scheme. He was watching it unfold, calm as a spectator at a ball game. Adler shoved the man with the stun baton onto the ground, wrenching his arm until the device skittered across the pavement. But when he looked up, he followed Imani's gaze straight to the SUV. His stomach sank. Parrish. The detective lifted his phone, tapping something on the screen. The SUV door never opened. The vehicle didn't speed away. It simply sat, engine humming, while chaos swallowed the park. Maya's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got the SUV on camera. Live stream's running. Everyone online is seeing this right now." Tyrell whooped from his car. "Then let's make them famous." Adler dragged the stunned attacker to his knees, cuffing him fast. The man muttered under his breath, "You think you're saving anyone? You're the one on the list, Adler. You and her both." Imani yanked him by the collar. "What list? Who wrote it?" The man laughed bitterly. "Ask your brother." Her world tilted. "Quentin?" But before she could press, the second vest-wearing man shoved through the panicked crowd, swinging a chain toward her head. Ranger intercepted, teeth snapping down, dragging him off balance. Parents screamed, children cried, vendors abandoned their booths. Adler fired a warning shot into the air. The crack shattered the noise, forcing everyone to freeze. "Police, get back!" The SUV's headlights flicked twice. Then it pulled slowly away, as if the message had already been delivered. Imani's hands trembled. Parrish wasn't hiding anymore. He wanted her to see him there, to know he's in charge. By the time backup swarmed Patterson Park, the block party was over. Families scattered, music equipment abandoned, food trucks shuttered early. The park looked like a battlefield of trampled balloons and spilled snow cones. Imani sat on the curb, Ranger pressed tight against her, his fur damp with sweat and rain. Adler stood nearby, giving a rapid report into his radio, but his eyes kept darting toward her. Maya packed up her laptop, still buzzing. "The stream's gone viral. People are already posting screenshots of Parrish in that SUV. They're asking why a detective was watching an attack instead of stopping it." Imani shook her head. "He doesn't care about cameras. He wanted me to see him there, to know he's in charge." Elena crouched beside her, tears streaking her face. "I swear I didn't know it would go this far. I thought I was just giving schedules." Imani's voice cracked. "That's all it takes." Adler finally joined them, holstering his weapon. His voice was low, urgent. This wasn't a failed grab. It was a message. They wanted to test the public reaction, to see how fast we'd respond, how the crowd would scatter, how the cameras would spin it. Imani whispered, "So the block party wasn't just bait for us. It was bait for the whole city." Ranger barked once, sharp, breaking the silence. Adler looked at Imani, then at Maya and Elena. "This changes the game. Parrish isn't in the shadows anymore. He's showing his hand. That means he's planning something bigger." Imani's grip on Ranger's collar tightened. Her voice was steady now, cold with resolve. "Then we stop playing defense." The weight of her words settled heavy over the group. Because tonight proved one thing. She wasn't just a waitress caught in the wrong place. She was the target. A block party turned battleground, a detective in plain sight, and a warning that the city itself is bait. What would you have done in Imani's shoes? Fight back or run? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Goodness Corner now, so you don't miss the next chapter. The storm isn't slowing, it's only building.